Good evening and calling the meeting to order. Welcome to the West Hartford Public Schools regular Board of Education meeting. It is Tuesday, December the 19th. Charlotte, may you please call the roll?
Mr. Gagnon?
Here.
Mr. Goldman?
Here.
Dr. Harris?
Here.
Ms. Marimón?
Excused.
Mrs. Nezzarella?
Present.
Dr. Thomas-Farquharson?
Here.
Mrs. Yogoloff?
Present.
Student Representative Liam Wright?
Here.
And Student Representative Chris Ramal.
Present.
Thank you. And as shared, our teammate Shannon had an unforeseen matter to attend to this evening, but she does extend her greetings to all. And with that, Chris, may you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We do not have a revision to the agenda order, but we do have student participation. Before we begin with our student participation, I want to say what an honor it is to have this moment today. It has been quite some time that we have had student participation in this format for various reasons. And so I'm excited to see them come before us. And who I'm talking about is the Conard High School Solo Choir under the direction of Mr. Sam Eurich. So as they make their way, I apologize if I mispronounced your name, but as they make their way before us again, we are so glad to have students here to remind us of why we are here. And board members, if we want to go over on that side so we can fully embrace the experience.
On the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me a partridge in a pear tree. On the second day of Christmas, my true love gave to me 2 turtle doves and a partridge in a pear tree. On the fourth day of Christmas,
on the third day of Christmas, my true love gave to me
5 golden rings, 4 calling birds,
French
2 turtle doves, and a partridge in a pear tree.
On the ninth day of Christmas,
On the 8th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me 8 maids of milking, 7 maids of milking, 6 maids of milking. You better not shout, you better not cry, you better not in a pear tree. On the 9th,
no! On the 8th,
no! On the 7th day of Christmas, my true love gave to Molly 7 tons of 76 of those little fire. Birds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves.
all I want for Christmas
is a partridge in a pear tree. On the 11th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 5 golden rings, 4 calling birds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves, and Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer. On the 12th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me a duck.
This is not height arrangement. There you go, there you go. Just make sure everyone can see.
All right. Well, yes, before you darted off, wanted an opportunity once again to not only say thank you, but to say how proud we are of each and every one of you. You all are so talented. My, oh, my. And I'm getting choked up. Having these moments reminds us of why we do what we do and who we are here to serve. And there are concerts happening throughout the district. I darted to one earlier myself today, and just to know that our young people are showing their talent in so many wonderful ways, you make us all so very proud. So thank you all so much again, and another round of applause, please. And thank you for your leadership as well. And please, I want to make sure your name is pronounced correctly. Please say your last name.
Eurich.
Eurich, pardon me. Yes, and to the director, Mr. Eurich, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now we'll continue with the program, the agenda that is, rather. And now it is time for public communications. This is where we have an opportunity to hear from you, your thoughts, your questions, your suggestions, your concerns. Each individual is allowed 3 minutes to speak, and we ask when you come to the podium to please share your name and your town of residence. Also be mindful of Charlotte, who will hold up a yellow card when you have 1 minute remaining in your time. And when your time is expired, you will see a red card. We ask for you please to respectfully take your seat at that time. Please be mindful that we are attentively listening to comments as they're being made. However, it is policy that we do not respond to comments that are being shared. We also, of course, ask for you to share your thoughts and comments in a respectful way. With this being the second meeting of the month, we are hearing comments on agenda items. And for us all to remember, or rather to recall, the agenda items for this evening include appoint board member to the policy subcommittee, kindergarten start time, and personnel report. So again, we are receiving public comments on agenda items. I have a list here of those that have signed up, beginning with Sean Herring. Okay. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for the gentleman just acknowledged that his comment is not on an agenda item. If you don't mind reserving it for the next meeting we have, thank you so much for respectfully following that policy. Thank you. Next, we have Jacob Werblow.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. So my comment was related to policy, and I saw that there's a...
Pardon me, although I said your name. If you can please say your name and town of residence.
Sure. Jacob Werblow, West Hartford, Connecticut. So my item is related to policy, and that's on the agenda. So may I speak on that issue? So as a parent being involved with the West Hartford schools for a number of years, it's a wonderful place to be.
I'm so sorry. Pardon me. Pardon the interruption. Yes, we are having policy matters covered today, but in terms of a policy appointment, not a specific policy per se.
Yeah, I just wanted to share an idea about how we can have more parent community involved with policy making.
If I may, and thank you for being transparent in what your intent is. However, because that's not a specific agenda item for this evening, I will ask you as well, if you don't mind reserving that for the next time we do receive comments on non-agenda items. Thank you for respectfully following the policy. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make a comment on an agenda item? And again, thank those who are here for, again, being respectful for where we are. Anyone else? Okay.
Just make a suggestion. Can we put them on the list to go first for the next meeting? Because I showed up. I realized it's unlikely we're going to get 10 people, but it'd be a shame if they showed up next month and they were number 11.
Duly noted. Duly noted. Thank you. And with that, we will continue with the agenda, going to non-staff communications and reports, where we will receive reports from our student board representatives. And we'll first hear from Liam, speaking on Hall, please.
Yes, so at Hall we are, we are wrapping up our calendar year and getting ready for our holiday break. Tomorrow we have our annual holiday concert where our band, orchestral, and choir groups will perform. Last week, West Hartford police officers came in and gave presentations about safe driving in our wellness classes. And in the realm of athletics, the winter season is in full swing with indoor track, baseball, hockey, wrestling, and boys swimming, all having taken part in competition so far. Finally, teachers are giving preliminary information about midterms for when we get back from break. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. And Chris, sharing about Conard.
So with Conard, it's similar as to Hall. We are wrapping up this calendar year. So it's just the holiday concert. Ours is on Thursday. The group that you just heard will also be performing at that concert, 7 p.m., I believe, at Conard. And so if you want to watch them and further, more of their songs, 7 p.m. at Conard on Thursday will be when you can do that, and other musical groups as well at Conard. And so further, our sports have also begun, which the first boys hockey game was last night against Tri-Town, which ended in a 3-0 victory for Conard. And so the Conard mock trial team has also continued on to the Connecticut mock trial competition earlier this week, and they'll be moving on to the quarterfinals, which will be later on in February. And then the Conard Model UN team and the Hall Model UN team are working together to create a conference and planning on hosting different schools from throughout the area, including Northwest and Miss Borders.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you both. Moving on to unfinished business, which we do not have any of, and on to new business, where we have a motion by Lorna Thomas-Farquharson to appoint Jason Gagnon as a member of the West Hartford Board of Education Policy Subcommittee. The recommendation again is to appoint Jason Gagnon as a member of the Policy Subcommittee in place of Shannon Marimón. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Gail. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Claire. Discussion. So just to give some context, first of all, we are so fortunate to have a wonderful team of members who are all willing to help out in so many ways and serve in so many capacities. And what some of you may know and some may not know is that serving on the Board of Education entails not only the meetings that we have here, but also several subcommittees, one of them being the Policy Committee. And so with us trying to balance and make sure that we are delegating accordingly, we are doing a rearrangement where we're making the recommendation to appoint Jason to serve on the Policy Subcommittee, and Shannon is serving in so many other ways as well. We don't want to overload people prematurely. So that is the reason for this motion. Any other discussion points? All right. All of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Thank you and welcome, Jason. Moving on now to staff communications and reports, where we will receive our superintendent's report from Mr. Vicines.
Thank you very much, Lorna, and welcome everyone here to our last Board of Ed meeting of the calendar year. I'm very excited, and I couldn't be more excited after hearing that group of young people perform Conard Solo Choir. Just immensely proud of our entire music program, and we have had concerts and programs across all of our schools at every level, and as I just heard, several that are still upcoming. So please take an opportunity. Lots of things to be proud of. I'm going to mention a few. Very excited. Recent news: Cindy Barron, who is a pre-K teacher at Charter Oak International Academy, and our own Irene Garneau, who I recognize in the crowd, who will be presenting to us later. She is our department supervisor for early childhood education. The two of them had the privilege of presenting at the National Association for the Education of Young Children's annual conference earlier this fall. Their presentation was titled Documentation versus Decoration, telling the story of young children's thinking and learning. And their presentation focused on using meaningful displays to document student work connected to learning standards. So kudos to them for putting us out on the national stage, once again for our efforts in early childhood. Very pleased to report Bugby students Gabriel Massey and Patrick Hennessy and Norfelt student Louis Liu placed first, second, and third respectively in the state fall 2023 elementary division of the stock market game. So if you have some extra cash lying around, I can make that available to them for some investment advice. And then we also had 14 Charter Oak Elementary students who have been selected to be honored at a UConn's women's basketball game upcoming on December 31st at the IXL Center. This is part of the Stars of Honors program coordinated by UConn, and there's information in the email that I sent out if you'd like to learn more about that. Under operations, I wanted to let you know we have had a school cancellation. We will continue to have a school cancellation for very specific to our Strive and post-secondary programs, which is due to a loss of power at the Cogswell building site, which is on the American School for the Deaf campus. We are tenants at that campus. They've had some issues with the storm. They do have a contact team that's going to be on the ground at 7 a.m. tomorrow. However, we do not anticipate that necessarily there's a guarantee that school will be ready for operation. So we've gone ahead and called school for tomorrow, and communication has been sent out to all families via both phone and through email. Very excited to share 3 of our elementary schools, Norfelt Elementary, Webster Hill, and Whiting Lane, have earned special recognition by the Connecticut State Department of Education as schools of distinction. And this honor was earned based on exceptional growth within the literacy area of state assessments. Collectively, these 3 schools had 74% of their students achieving at or above goal, which is tied for the highest mastery rate ever seen since the implementation of new state assessments. And as an aside, their mathematics achievement rivals that, being the highest they've ever had. But it was specifically the growth. And I know that we had a presentation by our own Ann McKernan, where she, I believe, described in your report what an average, what the growth targets are, how challenging those growth targets are. The average percentage of growth target achieved for literacy across these three schools was 76.5%, which distinguishes them among the top 10% of all schools within Connecticut. So kudos to those three schools. And then the only other thing I want to make mention of is just my last friendly reminder that this coming Friday, December the 22nd, I'll get it correct this time, we'll be following a Wednesday early release schedule. The information has been shared out through schools, is on our website, and I believe is fairly well communicated to our families. So, barring your questions, that is my report for this evening.
Thank you so much. Teammates, any questions or comments? Yes, Claire.
Yeah, I'm curious for the Strive program, since some of the kids work at the bookstore and have other jobs. When a school closes like that due to weather, the kids that are outplaced and have jobs out in the community, can they continue to go to their jobs, or do they not go to work at all?
So I can speak to the bookstore. We did make the decision to close the bookstore in this scenario, and generally our closings are, as you say, Claire, due to the weather. So in those situations, in all likelihood, we wouldn't be asking the students. Relative to other jobs out in the community, I'll have to actually owe you an answer if I had and I'm assuming like a paying job, but something that was coordinated through the schools. I can get that answer. It might be different for community-based jobs, but I'm not 100% certain off the top of my head.
Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you so very much for that update. Now moving on to staff reports and board discussions, where we will discuss the kindergarten start age, and we welcome to the table Ms. Ann McKernan, Dr. Carrie Jones, and Ms. Irene Gagnon, who will report.
And my apologies for not letting you know. Dr. Carrie Jones is actually absent from us today, but our thoughts are with her. So I'm pleased to have, and as you all know, Ann McKernan, our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, and I'm sure that most of you know Irene Gagnon, who is our Department Supervisor in Early Childhood Education. And I'm excited to have them present as their technology comes up. I'll just remind the board, without hopefully stealing any of their thunder, West Hartford, as well as all school districts across the state of Connecticut, will be implementing the new legislation in the fall that moves Connecticut start age to grade 5 by September 1st. Connecticut is one of the last states in the country to actually move their start age this way. I believe we're either last or second to last, Irene. We're the dead last. And so this is, we recognize this is a significant change, not only for our community, but families across Connecticut, and we want to make sure that we can provide some basic information, rationale, and an explanation of our procedures. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our team.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you tonight. I'm pleased to be here and joined by Irene Gagnon, who is our department supervisor for early childhood and is very well versed on this change. And I've learned so much from her in preparing the board report and working on our approach to this change. And I am going to let her really lead us through most of this. So with that.
Okay. I'll share my care.
Yes, go.
Hi, and it's nice to see a few new faces on the board since the last time I've been here. We're here tonight to share some information about the new legislation, as Paul mentioned, that will impact our West Hartford families with young children, and in particular, those turning 5 in the next year, and especially those who have children with fall birthdays. We have become accustomed lately to referring to those fall birthdays as our burr babies, as in September, October, November, and December. So you'll hear us use that language a little bit throughout the presentation tonight. So the law itself was passed in the very last hours of the last day of the legislative session, and a bill for the social and emotional well-being of children is what they called it. The bill has two parts that affect kindergarten. The first is a change to the entry date, as Paul mentioned, and the entry date was previously January 1st, and the new law has moved that to September 1st. And unlike the previous law governing the start date, where it was just an established date, January 1st, if you were born on January 2nd, you waited a year. There's a new caveat in this law that allows families to request early entrance to kindergarten if you're born between September 2nd and January 1st of the coming year. And the legislation has really created a circumstance that we have not encountered before. Up until now, it was the date and the date alone that made that decision for us. And now, if a family would like to be considered for early entrance or their child to be considered for early entrance, we are obliged to provide an assessment for that child and to assess their readiness for kindergarten. The assessments will be nationally normed. They'll be informed by multiple sources. There'll be a live assessment where children will come in for small play-based assessment with certified teachers. There'll also be a parent questionnaire and a teacher questionnaire. We want to make sure we're looking at the whole child and especially getting information from people that know the child the best, who are their parents, of course, and their preschool teachers that they're sending. It will look at readiness skills in the areas of self-help, early academics, and social emotional development. We do want, and children, they need to meet or exceed kindergarten readiness benchmarks to be considered for early entrance into kindergarten. And we do anticipate that early entrance will continue to be the exception versus the rule. So one of the big questions is, why did Connecticut make this change? And Paul alluded to this. It really brings us in alignment with the rest of the country. Up until now, Connecticut has had the latest start date in the country at January 1st. All other states have start dates that fall between even as early as July 1st through October 1st, with most of them falling in September. In the past decades, we've also seen an increase in the rigorous academic curriculum for some of our youngest learners in kindergarten. And I believe the legislators aimed at not only aligning Connecticut with the other states, but also made this change to benefit the health and well-being of our kindergarten students. By waiting another year, young children have a distinct advantage. In fact, many of our West Hartford families have elected to hold their children back for an additional year, and so they are 5 when they enter. And this extends, and it has extended in the past, the age range of kindergartners from 12 months to really a 16-month range, which creates a bit of a divide between them, both academically and in their social emotional readiness skills. So the new law will help us to keep a more consistent 12-month span among students versus that previous 6-month span that we've often seen in the past. Along with the new date change, the second part of the legislation also requires play-based teaching and learning in kindergarten. And coupled with the later cutoff date, these new laws will help support the social and emotional well-being of our kindergarten students. Longitudinal data across the nation and even in West Hartford tells a story of how our burr babies fare compared to their peers that enter kindergarten having already turned 5, and especially compared to peers who enter kindergarten as 6-year-olds in the fall, where they're turning 6 maybe in September, October, November, December. So we have a little bit of data to share with you around that.
So, okay. One of the things that, thank you, Irene, sorry. So you'll see on the screen that we have this % of kindergarten students who are receiving math intervention who have birthdays from September 2nd to January 1st, are burr babies. And 50% of the children who are receiving math intervention in kindergarten are burr babies. But they only make up 28% of the kindergarten. It helps you to see some of the struggles they may have. So I'll just repeat that because there's a lot of numbers there, right? So 50% of the children receiving math intervention are burr babies, but they represent only about 28% of each class. And if we look at the literacy intervention, 37% of our children receiving literacy intervention are burr babies, again, making up only about 28% of the class. So we're seeing a greater need for immediate intervention. Obviously, these are much younger children, and that was, I'm sure, one of the many factors that went into the legislators' minds when they changed this law, among the fact that Connecticut was the absolute latest state in the country.
Very good. Okay, so the next graph actually was created by Paul, and he pulled data that compares third grade math and literacy scores. We're looking at the 2 years pre-COVID and then the most recent 2 years, kind of taking the COVID years out of the equation. And on average, a 7-year-old third grader who is a Burr baby entering kindergarten at age 4 underperformed their peers who start grade 3 at age 8, so those who started when they were 5, by 12 points in literacy and 14 points in math. And when you then compare sort of the blue line to the gray line or column, those are 7-year-old Burr babies versus 8-year-old Burr babies in the same third grade class. And the gap increases to 16 and 18 points respectively. So you can see on the next slide that the math data is very similar. So that's sort of the why. And now we are required as a district to respond to that and respond to the law and put into place a process for families who want to request early entrance. So each district in the state has been left to create their own process that must include a written request from a parent or guardian and an assessment of readiness skills by the school staff. West Hartford's responding to the new legislation by really trying to follow the letter and the spirit of the law, and we've created a process that we believe is in the best interest of our community. And the process has already begun. So we've created an electronic newsletter. I'm sure many of you have seen the district S'mores. So it's a S'mores, the platform. And we've shared it with all of our partnering early childhood programs in the private sector, local media, and it's also on our website. And as of this morning, we've had almost 1,400 viewings of that electronic newsletter. So it's definitely already getting out there. It outlines the process for requesting early entrance, which starts with a welcome to kindergarten information meeting. That's actually for all incoming kindergarten families. And then February 1st is the deadline for the written request for early entrance. Then we have an assessment window between February 7th and 23rd. That'll be by appointment. We have also sent out anyone who's we already have 31 families that have asked for early entrance consideration. And we asked them to pick 3 top dates over a 3-week period, trying to be flexible and accommodate their very busy schedules. We know the schedules of parents of young children can be quite crazy sometimes. And then by February 29th, the decision or the recommendation will be communicated to parents and guardians. And we've moved up our own internal timelines around kindergarten registration to provide ample time for families to notify their current pre-K programs whether or not they need to withdraw or remain enrolled for the 24-25 school year. It's a little bit about the timeline for early entrance. We also, because there are several new board members, wanted just to kind of refresh everyone's memory about what the typical kindergarten transition timeline looks like for our age-eligible students. So that starts again with that town-wide welcome to kindergarten meeting in January. And then online kindergarten registration opens on January 15th. So that was one vestige of COVID where we went fully online and we've remained there, and it's worked out pretty well for most families. In April, our school-based parent orientation evenings occur in each individual school where families learn more about the expectations and inner workings of their own neighborhood school. In May, we invite incoming kindergarten students to join us, where we get to meet them. They meet teachers and principals and each other. And it's a day for us to meet our new students and start building relationships with our new families. And then sharing the message. So getting the word out. How are we getting the word out to our families about the new law? Not everyone knows. Some people, the law passed, I think, on July 1st. I think my first email from a parent was on July 5th. Mm-hmm. They waited for the holiday and then they started. And then I've run into some families that really have no idea that this change happened. So we're trying to get the message out to our community in the best way possible. And that's really, we're doing that primarily through this electronic newsletter, through this SMORE. And the main reason for that is it's really accessible to anyone who has a phone, which we know most families do. And it's translatable into over 100 languages. So for our very diverse community that speaks over 70 languages, we felt that that was a very important piece to have for them. It provides information on the regular kindergarten transition process, information on the new law and the cutoff date, much to what we shared with you tonight, and information on the early entrance process and a link so that they can submit their written request. So it's all right there for them. And then how are we going to get people to find that s'more? How are we going to get them there? So we have a mailer. So that's what this picture is. That's going to be a postcard that's actually getting mailed out next week. We've decided to wait till after the Christmas cards and holiday cards are out. And they will come in 4 languages. So our 4 top languages spoken in district: English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Vietnamese. And in the center, there's a QR code that will bring you to the s'more. And then that s'more, again, is translatable into many, many languages. So the mailer will go out, and that goes out to actually every household in West Hartford with a child under the age of 6. So we'll definitely hit our target audience of 5-year-olds, but we'll also hit our audience of families that have younger children, that they now can have access to this information and better prepare for the next few years to come. We also blew this up and we put them on lawn signs. So lawn signs and then additional flyers will be going out actually on Thursday, picking up the lawn signs tomorrow actually. And they're going to be going out to basically anywhere you might find a young child in their family. So schools, libraries, the pool, community centers, grocery stores, doctors' offices. If you have any suggestions, please send them my way. We're trying to hit everything we can. And then, of course, all of our information is on the West Hartford website and shared. We will share through our contacts in social media. And Paul has worked with Ronnie on getting a press release out through our local media as well. And then finally, so there's going to be some impact on the right side, impact on our early childhood community. So yes, this is a big change for our kindergartens, but it's also a change for our early childhood programs and providers in town, because there's going to be many more preschoolers there that are not going to be able to move on to kindergarten. So to provide an example, I have in my general ed pre-K classrooms, I have 9 of those. There's about 28 burr babies that would fall under this new law. So we have guaranteed them another 3rd year in pre-K. That's not typically how it goes, but we want to make sure that we're taking good care of our families that are currently enrolled in West Hartford schools. But if you extrapolate that out, so I have 28 of those students. But if you extrapolate that out to all of the early childhood programs in town, they're all just going to be feeling a little extra. So there's going to be a bit of a early childhood crunch in town and really across the state. So I know the Office of Early Childhood is working hard on that, and we continue to look for guidance on how we can best support our families in finding high quality early childhood experiences before they come to us in kindergarten.
Next.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. Also, we'll be monitoring our impact on our kindergarten. This may result in some fewer children coming this year, so we'll be monitoring our age-eligible registrations and all of the early entry requests to determine if there's any impact on the sections of kindergarten or any impact on support staff or staff. So we'll do that throughout this process, and we'll really have a good sense. I applaud Irene and Carrie for their very thoughtful work about and very considerate work of, and doing something in an area that we just haven't had to do before, and obviously a very sensitive area for families who are getting ready to send their children to kindergarten for the first time. So it is a big change. It's one of the biggest changes we've seen, and with little notice, but I think our team has done an exceptional job of pulling it together, and we will be very focused on this work in the coming 2 months, especially in January, rolling it out, in February, working with the families and communicating by March 1st. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Questions, comments with what we have received? Yes, Gail.
Thanks for the presentation. I have a couple of questions, but my first question is, you changing the date for, I mean, I know you're not, but the state is changing the date from January 1st to September 1st. Why are you why is it that interval? Like, why not change it to June 1st? Like, why is it, what is it that's making us say that in those 4 months things are going to be so different in these kids' performance later on.
I believe the legislators considered what other states were doing. And because most states were as early as July 1 and most didn't go past October 1, they chose September 1 as kind of a midpoint and saying that was much more in line with many states. But beyond aligning with other states, I don't know their research, if they went beyond that.
I guess what I'm asking is there like data that supports that, that 4-month interval is like dramatic enough as opposed to if you had like a 6-month interval.
Yeah.
It's a great question. I can't speak to what drove the legislators' process. I do know that they were definitely in communication. I was lucky to be privy to a conversation with our chair of the legislative committee who came and talked about the change with a group of superintendents. I know that they were in communication with the State Department of Education and the Office of Early Childhood throughout the process, having a lot of back and forth. So I do imagine there's some research base. I can only speak to hearing of this change. We analyzed our data, but I didn't analyze it beyond the comparison of September 1st versus January 1st. And what was interesting, at least certainly for the September 1st, and I think it was, literacy was the piece that I pulled out. I think it was a 12-point difference. So if I look at the group of burr babies that essentially would, under this legislation, by the birthday alone, absent a request from a family to come in early, and there are about 140 of them on average in a given kindergarten year. They scored 12. That group of students scored 12% lower, or 12% fewer of them met mastery in third grade versus their peers at that same grade level. And again, that difference increased, that underperformance increased if you compared them to the peers. So if they waited a year essentially. And went in with the September 1st birthday. But your question, hey, could we go back and, what if it had been, 2 months earlier or something like that, is it's a fair question, and it's certainly something that we can research with local data because we have their assessment results and we have their birthdays and all of that. But I don't know that, I don't know that we'd want to create a condition that was more constrained for the families. I think a lot of the beyond kindergarten readiness, that families will often raise their hand and say, I do believe that my child is ready. There are other impacts that have many districts having conversations, and it's the financial impact for families in terms of an additional year of daycare, right, or pre-K, private pre-K. So. But it's a good question. I can only speak to our data, and I think our intervention data, and even the intervention data leads to potential identification, and I've glanced at those numbers, and there's an impact. There's a very real, a very measured impact, and so I acknowledge the rationale of the State Department of Education, while at the same time I'm very empathetic to the financial impact that this creates for families. It's a very, it's putting districts right there at the center. But we're gonna work with every family. Irene and I have traded emails recently just with a family with a unique situation, and doing everything that we can to support folks in this and be able to provide them that assessment and our best, measured professional guidance as to what we think is best for each individual child.
Other questions or comments? Yes, Claire.
So I'm very happy about this change. I'm also a proponent of universal pre-K and wish that they could go hand in hand. And I've been following this for 20 years. Alaska and Connecticut were the last two states to be after October. And Alaska, I think 10 years ago, move back to October 1st, move to October 1st. The other big impact on this is any of the Burr babies who happen to have special needs to go into the early learning center. Those children have to officially be retained in pre-K 4 and held back in order to not start kindergarten, not only with special needs, but as the youngest kid in their class. And when that burden is put on a kid with special needs who isn't ready, but then you have to do a whole hold you back in pre-K 4 so you can start kindergarten at 5, it's very complicated. So it sounds like we're making room for all those children that are in the pre-K program now. That assessment for them, though, is it by parent choice, or if a parent doesn't choose to have a pre-K 4 child who's a Burr baby assessed, do they just roll into the 5th pre-K year? Not pre-K 5 year.
Wait, look, I think we kind of can't make up our mind on what we want to call that third year of pre-K, pre-K 5, transitional.
Well, it's not really, because a lot of those kids didn't get a full first year. They came in when they turned 3.
Correct. So if you're currently enrolled as a preschooler, whether you're in the general ed classrooms at Charter Oak, Webb, and Smith, or if you're at the ELC at Aiken and Whiting Lane, you are guaranteed that extra time, that extra year, so that you are entering kindergarten with the new cutoff date.
Right.
So no one is asking you to go out and find a private program. Oh, sorry, you've already had your 2 years. You can't come back.
Right.
So we want to make sure that we're taking care of our currently enrolled students. And, the only negative side effect of that is we're going to take less, I'll be able to take 28 less students new in from the community in the fall.
No, this impact of this change is going to be more substantial this next year and the following year, and then you start to adjust. You know that your baby that's born is going to enter kindergarten at a standard age. But with other states, are these assessments common, or is it just a waiver that the state of Connecticut is giving because of this drastic change? And at some point, do you see this assessment and waiver testing going away?
Great question. A number of things I want to reinforce, and I'll answer that question, and I'll ask Irene to chime in on anything I miss. But just going back to students with special needs, who are typically serviced through our Early Learning Center, or ELC, I just want to reiterate what you said and what Irene said, that there's a whole different set of regulations that govern attendance, and as soon as a child achieves their 3rd birthday, they're eligible to come and receive services through the Early Learning Center, and that's a rolling admission. So it's not a born by this certain date, so there is no change to that. And as you point out, we will. A parent may elect to ask, if they feel that their child has kindergarten readiness, they may, just as any other student, they may elect to ask for that. But otherwise, there's nothing special they need to do if the plan is for them to continue services. And I heard you say that. In terms of what other states are doing, and in terms of this waiver process, and are there assessments? So there are assessments. I think we've narrowed ours down to 2, or maybe you guys have even made more progress since we last spoke. But there are 2 nationally normed assessments that we're looking at that support kindergarten readiness. We're just trying to make that final decision here in the next couple of weeks as to which aligns best in terms of us. And unfortunately, Irene kind of mentioned it. The state hasn't come forward to say this is the assessment that Connecticut will use. They have left it to districts, but they've told districts you must have an assessment. Some districts have asked, hey, do I need to assess? Can I just make this based on a parent request, or can I just simply flat out deny any? And the state has said no at both extremes. You must have an assessment, and you can't not have an assessment. So we'll make a determination. In terms of other states, I haven't done the full research to even understand if other states have a waiver. The waiver was something that the State Department of Ed and the Office of Early Childhood, I think, put in
going back to your point, I think that there was a lot of support in general, kind of across the board, for Connecticut to move to this later entry date. But there's a big but attached, and that is, but what about the pre-K impact that it has? And so that's really where the waiver was born out of, was the fact that there's recognition that this is going to create a one-year bubble. But it should just be more or less a one-year bubble, year, maybe two, with the way we have two, pre-K 3, pre-K 4. But it will self-correct after that. I'm not aware that other states even have a waiver to their piece. And there was talk, I think the legislator who came and spoke, provided opinions about whether or not that waiver would remain in place. But those opinions are only that at this point in time. There are a lot of other voices in the conversation from the State Department of Ed, other legislators. I think the community feedback that's going to come to the state will have to be weighed carefully this year. And I think a lot of it will have to do with what the state's able to do about the pre-K situation in general, in terms of, will this waiver be a one and done? Will it last in perpetuity? Those are questions that we are all asking. All districts, all superintendents at every opportunity, and with all audiences, we're asking those questions. And I expect you'll hear from. I'll provide you with updates on that as that situation kind of emerges. I don't know if I missed anything, or you may have special insights because you're in a lot of these conversations too.
I really don't know a lot more than you do. It's an evolving conversation across the state. I have the pleasure of sitting on an early childhood committee for CAS, and the conversation across the state of administrators is very similar. And I'm a little bit proud to say that West Hartford is a little bit ahead of everyone else, and I think some of those 1,400 visits are because other districts are looking at our work already. I will say, and I neglected to mention earlier, in response to the kindergarten date change, we have also altered the pre-K entrance start date. So children will now need to be 3 by September 1st to start in our pre-K programs, with the exception of the ELC. As Paul mentioned, that's an rolling enrollment, and you qualify on the day you turn 3. So hopefully that will, over the next couple of years, realign our internal pre-K programs so that there's no need for the third year within the district. So those will also shift. Previously, they could come in as, I used to affectionately call them 2-9ers, the Burr babies.
Jason.
First, let me just say thank you. I mean, it is a Herculean task when you receive a mandate that's both unfunded and with little guidance. So, I mean, I think we're all very impressed with what you have been able to do, and I'm sure the teams behind the scenes have put together. Just it's a long way to have come in a very short period of time. So thank you. My one question is, we've talked about a crunch and a bubble in terms of pre-K. So my question is, do we have any sense of, between the district's pre-Ks and the pre-Ks out in the community, whether we'll be able to weather this crunch that's coming? And that's a we as a community.
It's a really good question.
Well, I think some of the research we have done tells us how many students might fall into this category. So that's one metric we're looking at, right? How many children does this affect? And you can tell that by looking at the last few years and how many Burr babies there are every year. And Liz Hewitt does that number for us. And I think the last check was 160-ish. 140-ish students. So, you have a potential of 140 students who may be either looking to come in and go through this process, or some who will be saying, no, I'll stay where we are. We know 28 are taken care of, right? Yes. We know 28 are taken care of. And so we don't know, I certainly don't know the pre-K availability, but we start with that number 160. We know the 28 we'll be able to take care of, and then we are already getting requests as early as the form opened. But we do believe there will be a crunch out in the community, and I think it will affect a 3-year-old a lot more, because if you retain a 4-year-old for a year, then like we will offer fewer 3-year-old spots. I think that's where the effect will be seen the most. I don't have a good sense of that number.
Yeah, and it's a very good question because we're currently in a childcare crisis.
Yeah.
Right? So there's already not enough spaces for the population of 3 and 4-year-olds, really birth to 4-year-olds. So creating more spaces is going to be an endeavor. And hopefully, between the partnership of the OEC and our community providers, they'll be able to meet that need. That's a very good question.
Thank you.
Ethan, yes.
2 questions. Is there an expectation or target as to how many the Burr babies will be able to move up? Or I'm just curious,
I'll let you answer, but I certainly understand the question. I think we really are going to try to do that on an individualized basis with each request, because the first one of the things that's even unknown to us is how many families in this situation will apply.
Right.
Because while we are servicing, while our current kindergarten enrollments have approximately 140 students that are Burr babies, I'm not even certain if will that generate roughly 140 applications? Will it generate 100 applications? Especially in consideration, I think it's the first opportunity to really have this conversation with the community and say, let's look honestly at what some of the data and statistics show us, and go back to that question of why did the state of Connecticut choose to make this change in the first place? And I don't think it was a change to merely come in alignment. I think there's a thoughtful change, as Irene and Ann so aptly presented, in terms of the change of the academic standards and the measures of readiness and what longitudinal data is telling us.
I think it's a good change.
Yeah.
My question just is there like some kind of standard, or is there some kind of I'm just curious how you.
Absolutely.
There's more curiosity than anything else.
Yeah, the standard will be a normed standard based on a kindergarten readiness inventory or assessment, and I'm sure Irene can kind of point to some of the kinds of things that go into that. But in terms of is there a target and all of that, I really want to rest on an individual assessment and individual conversations with families, as opposed to leaning on like a quota system or something of that nature.
I'm going to give you an answer that I hate getting myself.
I'm sorry, say again?
I said I'm going to give you an answer that I hate getting myself, which is it depends. Like Paul said, it's going to depend on each child and each family and what they demonstrate.
I just was wondering if there's expectation. My second question is, and I realize this is early in the process, we're not about to hit budget, but we'll hit budget in a couple months. Is there any idea how much this will impact, or is it going to be just smaller classes because it's not enough to impact reducing class? Again, it's just curiosity.
Yeah, I'll grab that one. Just I do anticipate that there will be a budgetary impact if there are, if we realize the full 140 fewer, which is dramatically unlikely, but if no, if no Burr babies were enrolling next year, that would be approximately 140 fewer kindergarten enrollments. That would be a significant budget decrease. I don't anticipate it's going to be that significant, but there may be the opportunity here or there where, and it kind of will depend on where these enrollments fall out.
Sure.
And in terms of the class size guidelines for kindergarten and the numbers of sections.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Oh, Claire, yes.
So one of the things that was curious, when I spoke at the legislative office about this change, the legislators weren't aware that 2-year-olds get to start pre-K. And most didn't realize that if you turned 3 by January 1st, you could enter pre-K. And working every week with pre-K kids, especially in the last 2 falls, I've had them from September on. 2-year-olds in pre-K are really young, and as far as developmentally ready. And so then you also have your 4-year-olds that that qualified to start school, but maybe weren't ready. And some of the behaviors and the executive functioning and the skills that you need to cope in an environment with a bunch of other kids aren't quite there. So I'm glad we're doing the assessment. I'm glad it's going to be norm-based. I wonder about the parents that get the bad news that their child is not advanced at 4 and can't start kindergarten early. And that's going to be hard news to get for some families. And whether it's going to be the principal that has to give that news, is it the home school that gives the test, and then the classroom teacher? You know, it's going to be hard. It's really hard to do those assessments on those babies and then pass on the you didn't pass.
Yeah, and I'm going to let you talk. I'll just, intro it with, this is an important component of our work. I think every day we have families, and they bring us their absolutely most prized possession in life, and want nothing but the absolute best for them, and they're entrusted to our care to support them. And obviously we take that work very seriously, but it's a very human endeavor. And you're absolutely right. Anytime, and it's expectations, because I wouldn't want any family at any point, if it's a question of readiness 4 months early or 1 year early, to feel that there's any in any way, shape, or form any failure in that. It's just a question of what's best for a child in a given moment in time, and we have such skilled folks who like Irene, who can speak to that. So I'm gonna let her describe how best guess at some of that, but there's always a team that can be available to provide support for a family in delivering any news about programming for their child.
Yes. So, yes. We made a decision to centralize the process, because the foundation of all of our work, especially in early childhood, is building genuine positive relationships with families and delivering news such as that, maybe that your child isn't quite ready, is difficult. And that's not going to start off a relationship with a principal that you're going to be with for the next 6 to 7 years on a good foot. So we made a decision to centralize that. So it likely will be me who is delivering that news. And I can't guess how many or what percentage of our folks that have requested early entrance that conversation will happen with. But we are trying to do our best to preserve relationships with the school-based folks. We don't want kindergarten teachers involved in that process, because that child might end up in a year in that teacher's class. So we're trying to keep it so that we protect relationships with families. I don't know if that answers your question fully, but that is sort of the core of what we do. Yeah.
Other questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you both so much for this information and the caring way that you are attending to it. Thank you. Moving on now to the personnel report, and we welcome to the table Mr. Julio Duarte.
All right, good evening, everyone.
Okay.
All right.
Just, pardon me, I'm having some cognitive dissonance seeing you and seeing that. I think that's going to come up in just a moment. Thank you. I have to digress for a moment. I think it was doing that on purpose. It said all the other times it took me forever to come up. Now I'm going to take my time to come back down. So thank you, Charlotte.
Nope.
Julio, to you.
No worries. I figured at some point I was just going to whack my head on it anyway, so I appreciate it being brought up, Charlotte. So a detailed overview of our personnel report can be found on page 7 of your board packet. As per district policy, I'm required to update the board on any changes that we have with our certified staff. Tonight, I'll provide you with a summary of these numbers as they reflect all of our changes since my last presentation in September. As you can see in this month's report, we had 7 resignations, 2 leave of absences, and 1 retirement. We also hired 9 contracted teachers, 5 interim teachers, and then I did list 2 administrators. These 2 administrators were actually hired this past summer, but were inadvertently left off of the September report, so I just wanted to be transparent and put them on there for the board. A quick reminder, particularly for our new board members, is that and the difference between an interim staff member and a person who is contracted is that a contracted employee is someone who we've hired. It's a permanent hire, and they're going to be here. An interim person is someone who's here filling in for an opening. Could be something like a maternity leave, where we anticipate that staff member coming back. And then finally, this data reflects our ongoing efforts to adapt to the dynamic needs of all of our schools. As I'm sure you've heard, finding qualified staff right now isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do, but we remain committed to maintaining a skilled and dedicated staff member in all of our positions to ensure that all of our students are provided with the best education possible. And certainly want to thank all of our team members and my team members and our administrators and everyone who's out there making sure and recruiting and doing all of those efforts, as well as everyone in my office that quickly tries to get everyone in, even all of our amazing college students who are home on vacation. If you're listening, we've got some openings in our substitutes. We'd love for you to apply. So we get that turnaround quickly to get them into our schools and into our buildings. So again, just wanted to give a quick plug to all of those folks. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you so much. Questions? Yes, Gail.
So I had a couple of questions. The first question is the interim teachers. Those are not, so if you're an interim teacher, you wouldn't be in the resignations. Those are contracted teachers, right? Only, is that correct?
Correct. So an interim teacher, like I said, it's someone who may be out. You may see it on the leaves of absence. So if you look at page 9, you'll see 2 leaves of absences that are there right now. And so some of those interim people may be folks that are for those 2, but we also have some that we may have hired knowing for an anticipated leave and things like that that may be coming up. Again, trying to be proactive.
Okay. My second question was, in the resignations, I thought it was, and maybe this is, is a reasonable, but it seemed like there were at least 4 out of the 7 that only started working in 2023 and then resigned. And then there was 1, I think, in 2022. So, I don't know, is that like bizarre a little bit, or is that standard that you'd have like people starting in 2023 and then they resign in 2023?
Yeah, I would certainly say it's not our goal when we hire someone. Everyone here I've had the opportunity to have conversations with and to meet with. I can share that, one of the individuals got a different opportunity in a different position completely in education, but in a different role. And then we had 2 folks that did leave. They were hoping to come back, and then they just realized that they couldn't manage this plus everything going on at home in their own personal lives and really needed to just focus on those efforts. And so I think they come, as do we, with the intentions of this is going to work out. But as we all know, sometimes the best intentions, then when you're really in it, you realize it's not something that we can manage. So, but yeah, our goal is always when we're hiring, they're going to be here for the long haul.
Right, because I figure, you have to put some resources into these people to bring them on board, and then, they're leaving within 1 year, and like you said, that there's obviously difficulty hiring people. So I didn't know if there was, obviously things happen in life, but obviously I would think we would want to retain the staff, especially,
Yeah, 100%, Galen. It's why, that I do like to do those exit interviews, and obviously I can't mandate folks to do that, but most people will take me up on it and really trying to see, hey, is it an us thing? Is there something we could have done different? And to be honest with you, all of these have really been just either different opportunities or just trying to juggle things that really they're just not able to work at this time.
and can I just ask my last question and then I'll stop? But in the contracted professional, I just was wondering, some of these people have like a plus 30 and a plus 10. Is that how many years they've worked?
No. So if you look at our contract, we've got different salary lanes. So essentially we hire someone, they may have a master's degree, and then you can have a master's plus 10, a master's plus 20, and a master's plus 30. Those are all essentially credits earned after the master. So someone with that's put on that master's plus 30 essentially has probably 60 graduate credits. Some of our folks, particularly like someone who's got a 6th year or our school psychologists, their graduate degrees are going to require 60, 64 credits. And so what we do is we actually will compensate them differently for that graduate work that they've done. Many of our teachers, if you're a classroom teacher, probably have a master's degree that's 30 credits. And so you would be at just the master's degree there. A little bit different, actually. I don't know, Paul, I haven't seen too many districts that really operate in that function. Most districts just do master's and then a master's plus 30, but we've sort of got those lanes in there. I think to incentivize folks to continue with their education, what we would really believe enhances their ability to deliver instruction or whatever their profession is. So we want to recognize that. As well as recognize that it costs a good amount of money, as I know you know, to further your education. So trying to compensate that too.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments?
With the master's plus 10, 20, and 30, you still have some reimbursement for teachers to apply for?
We do. So, and every year we've got a certain amount that's been allocated through the contract. I think this year it's well over $100,000. And what we do is we collect all of the folks that essentially are applying for that. And then at the end, we divvy it up to $1,500. So we encourage all of our people that are taking courses to really to apply and take advantage of that. Because again, as we've talked about needing to look at different ways to, I think we separate ourselves from other local districts because of who we are. And I think when I'm meeting with folks, people want to be here. But I do think it's important to look at what we offer our employees and the different components, such as being able to award them for additional education, but also to support them knowing that, hey, it's going to cost you, whatever it is to take a course, and we're happy to support you with $1,500.
Right. And on top of that, the district also allows you to take courses that matter to you or that you're interested in, and it doesn't have to be a set graduate program. So your 30 credits doesn't have to be in a total lane of this degree.
Correct. What we do is we just ask folks to submit it to me. I'll look at them all individually just to ensure that there's some connection to help improve teaching and learning. And as long as we see, that there's a connection there, that we would approve that. We also offer a partnership with Lake St. Joe's that's 30% off tuition, and so really encouraging people to do that. We've reached out to some of our other universities. They weren't as eager to take us up on that. So if they're listening and would like to, I'm happy to take any phone call to also create a partnership with some of our other universities for our employees to take advantage of.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you very much. Moving on now to routine matters where we have approval of the minutes. Seeking a motion that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the regular Board of Education meeting of December the 5th, 2023. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Jason. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Gail. Discussion. All of those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Thank you so much. Moving on to information and reports. Board members, do we have any communication and reports from other boards and organizations? Seeing none, any other information and discussions? Seeing none, future business. Announcement of future meeting dates. Our next meeting will be next year. Oh my. Tuesday, January the 16th, 2024 at 7 o'clock here in room 314, followed by Tuesday, February the 6th, 2024. Again, regular Board of Education meeting at 7 o'clock here in room 314. And then once again, Tuesday, February the 21st, 2024, regular Board of Education meeting, and this is where we have adoption of the CIP. And this is at 7 o'clock p.m., room 314. Do we have a request for any future agenda items? Seeing none, do we have any visitors who would like to make a comment? Seeing none, appreciate the smile though. Seeing none, we do not have an executive session. Therefore, and before seeking a motion to adjourn, we already are in the holiday season and just want to continue to wish all those well and a safe and prosperous time with family and loved ones, as we must remember the reason for the season. And so with that, seeking a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Jason. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. Meeting adjourned at 8:49.